if you want to start going towards things from your past, the next thing that I think comes up, and we both have experienced this as well, right? And we talk to people a lot of times. And when we used to coach people and work with people, it was kind of the same thing where memory is a slippery thing. Memory is one of those things that is, it's just weird, right? The way that our brains store memories, the way that our brains remember things. And so a lot of times, I think when people initially start trying to connect to the past and starting to do some of this type of work, they don't have memories about things. So they think that they can't do any work around their childhood or around traumatic experiences because they just have big blank spots. They just have areas where they don't have memory. So we're not neuroscientists. We're not talking about the way that the brain works and everything like that. But what we do know, or what I do know from experience, is that memories change over time. Memories evolve, memories shift, even just in the present, right? You can look back to yesterday and it's almost like you can pull memories up from yesterday. And if you go towards those memories a little bit, they start to take shape even more, right? If I was going to ask you, what did we do yesterday? I don't even remember what we fucking did yesterday. See, that's the way memory works, right? But were you going to say something?
I was going to give you an answer. Like we recorded a podcast.
Yeah. So when we were recording yesterday, right, we can think back to that moment. And if we pick something in that space that we do remember, just one maybe insignificant thing, and then you start describing it, you start thinking about it, you start going towards that memory a little bit more, it's almost like the smoke or the haze or the fog lifts a little bit, and you start to get a little bit more clarity and a little bit more clarity and a little bit more clarity. And before you know it, a picture starts to take shape. And that's been my experience with childhood memories, where I'll go towards them and sit with them and think about them and look at them and process them and feel them. And next thing I know, they start to evolve a little bit more and the smoke starts to clear and they start to take shape more. And then the next step is the judgment that comes in and says, well, that's not a real memory. That's a fake memory. You made that up in your brain. You're not remembering it correctly. That didn't really happen that way. All of that narrative that takes place, you almost have to bring that along for the ride, right? Because if you just listen to that voice that says, well, you're making things up, or that didn't really happen, or that memory is just something that your parents told you, or you looked at a picture and then you took that picture that you saw and then elaborated on it and created it even more in your head. And all of that stuff, I think you just have to bring along with you rather than think that it invalidates the experience or invalidates the memory, because it's a mixture of all of it. That's what I believe. I believe that memory is a culmination of all of these kind of different influences. It's the stories that were told as you were growing up. It's we all have experiences in our family that were funny things, family stories, family memories, family experiences that got told over and over and over again. So we might not have the actual memory of the event, but we have the story around the event that we've heard over and over again. And getting very specific about, well, if I don't actually have the memory or if I don't actually remember it, isn't important when it comes to the emotional side of being able to validate and heal the wounds that happened in childhood. It's just not important. I don't know how else to say it, right? Mm-hmm. There's times when very specific details are necessary, but memory does not allow for very specific details. Like even, that's what, like in criminal justice, in, the court of law, eyewitness testimony sucks because there's so many different factors that play a role. So somebody might remember something that didn't happen and they've got camera footage of it or something like that. And somebody might testify to like, no, I saw this person or I saw this thing. And then they're like, well, survey says that's a lie, right? That doesn't negate the experience that that person had based off of whatever they might have experienced in the moment. So I think it's a slippery thing that we sometimes get caught up in society and definitely criticize and judge. And I know I did for a long time, where I got so specific of like, I have to remember things exactly as they happened. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to trust that what I was remembering was true, or trust the healing process that would come from that. Does all of that make sense?
It does. It does.
Do you want to speak about it a little bit from your experiences?
Yeah. There's also like the other perspective of there's a good chance that there may have been some gaslighting and some reframing of your memories that were done by caregivers, and not just caregivers, but people around you. Like you said, the whole society. We don't need to go through the list every time we say this, just some important role players in your childhood where you have a memory and they're like, that's not, like, you're invalidated. That's not what happened. This is what happened. And you like maybe got punished for telling the truth. You maybe got punished for how you remembered. You maybe got punished for your experience. And also you may have witnessed them retelling the event to other people differently and like coercing you in a sense to go along with it. There's so many different ways that people will shift and not want you to remember it the way that things happened. And so once that has happened, you start to play that with yourself. Maybe there was like traumatic experiences where you need to remember every detail exactly as it happens, or you're invalidated in a brutal way. They're using that as an abuse tactic over you. So then your brain is scared. It goes blank. You don't know how to trust your memories. There's so many different ways that trauma affects your brain. There's so many different ways, like memory itself, the way that the brain works it's based off of an event. It's based off of perception. It's what happened, and you will find ways to make it not so or invalidate it as well. And then you have the same thing, if I can't remember this, I know something's wrong here, but I don't have a memory to draw a connection to why this isn't okay. So I'm going to invalidate myself. Or I have the memory as to why, but nobody else seems to share that. So therefore I am wrong and I'm going to invalidate myself. A lot of it comes to really invalidating yourself and not trusting yourself. And the truth is we're human. We make mistakes. Sometimes we get it wrong, and our brain will hold that and be like, remember, you were wrong here, so you're going to be wrong here. If your brain can make it easier for you to survive based off of the coping mechanisms and the survival tactics that you learned as a child, then it's going to keep playing those, which is going to mess with your memory. So a lot of putting I have to remember this exactly doesn't always work. And then there's things in my memory that are so buried. There are things that are so buried. Through all this, I still haven't uncovered everything. And I felt like I had to. I have to see it all. And it was just like a self-punishment in a way. Like, I don't have to see it all. I can feel these feelings. And instead of trying to, like, I need the details. I need the literal the literal picture painted out for me in order to heal it. I can just start moving with, what am I feeling? What's coming up in my body? As you said, like, where is it in my body? What does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? What's the temp? Just all these different things, and work with moving that. And that sounds a little wild, but it's really beneficial. You don't always have to have the story, the memory, to be able to retell it. You can move with the emotion that you're experiencing with that. And sometimes doing that allows the memory to form, and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing to know, is the emotion of, especially when it comes to trauma, and especially when it comes to early childhood, trauma that took place, that oftentimes you're not going to have clear pictures and clear memories of it because of what you just said, right? Trauma affects stuff so significantly. It's not just after the fact, right? Trauma can obviously shape our brain differently, and all sorts of different stuff that they're kind of realizing now and doing studies on and everything like that. But
we were meant to be.